Wilson in the key. Kick out. Davenport.
And DeReese left 1-3. Got it!
Dunked. Slams it home.
Alright, welcome back to another episode of the Student Section. I believe this is episode 11 maybe. I will just be covering once again just playoff stuff. And before we get started, I just want to point out, yes, I am sunburnt. I look like Patrick the Star. So hopefully you guys can just ignore that for this episode. Hopefully I look better by the time next episode comes. But I don't think there's anything I want to mention anything else I want to mention before we get into this episode, other than the fact that it's a little bit of a late recording because the Timberwolves game just finished up. It is Sunday. So that game just finished, and because it's late recording, my bed is not made, so you gotta ignore that as well. They're pretty much just ignore the entire video. Just listen to this if you want to. Put your phone in your pocket and listen to this. But yeah, I'm gonna get straight into it. I'm gonna start off by recapping the previous 4 series, and I'm obviously gonna preview the upcoming 2 series as the title suggested, and I'm gonna give my title favorites as of now, just based off of matchups, basically. And stay tuned for draft content. I'll probably start putting that out once the playoffs is either completely over or if there is a week, like maybe next week I might do some draft stuff. But as of now, we're doing playoff stuff. So I'm gonna start off with the one that I think is the most boring, which was the Celtics Heat series. Donovan Mitchell obviously had an amazing series. Darius Garland started to pop off a little bit. And what I want to do with the teams that lost these series, I kind of want to bring over from last episode where I mentioned each team's off season, and I'm going to kind of continue that into this episode. So there's not much to say other than we know the Heat are good. There's a lot of not controversy, but a lot of questioning of Jason Tatum's ability to score, because his previous 2 or 3 playoff runs they've made, he's pretty much not done too good, and that's because teams will scheme to just completely shut him down and allow everyone else to score. But even then, other stars can score whenever they get that sort of attention, so it is kind of alarming if you're a Celtics fan. But I mean, this team is built strong enough that you don't really need him, and you could tell that you haven't really had spectacular games from Jason Tatum yet, and you have blowout wins. As far as it goes for the Heat, it's a scary offseason for you guys because you might end up losing Donovan Mitchell. I don't know if he's a free agent or going to request a trade. There's obviously been a lot of talk about him going to New York. But if I were you guys, I would try and do everything in your power to keep him. I've heard some trade rumors of sending either Darius Garland to the Heat, which I don't like just because I don't think the Cavs get enough back. But one place I do like is I've heard a lot of people talking about sending him over to the Pelicans. I think that's a really good team that could use him. There were a few more teams I can't remember. I know for sure the Pelicans was a team for Darius Garland, and I like that fit a lot. I've heard the Spurs. A lot of people think that'll be fun. Yeah, there are off-season moves you can make, and I think this postseason showed that you shouldn't really hold on to Darius Garland. I love Darius Garland. He's one of my favorite players as well to watch. So I don't want to see him moved, but if he does get moved, I want to see him go somewhere that's better. And obviously, these have to be places that can send a package back to the Cavaliers to help them retool pretty much, because if you're trading either Donovan Mitchell or have to get rid of Darius Garland, you're retooling. You're not wanting to rebuild in this stage. And a lot of people are questioning Evan Mobley's offensive capabilities, and maybe he gets explored. Maybe Jarrett Allen. I don't think they should be trading Jarrett Allen. I think he's really solid. They shouldn't be looking to move him. But in this offseason, you just really need to start building that depth. This past season, they did pick up guys like Georges Niang. They picked up the one guy from Miami Heat. I can't remember his name right now, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Not Max Strus, but it was Max Strus. Yeah, it was Max Strus. And they also got, I think that was pretty much their 2 main ones they picked up in the offseason. But they need to just get more wing depth. They just don't really have that. Even though they got those pickups, they just don't really have that. Which is why I would love to see them go and trade maybe Darius Garland. I can't. Why, dude? Oh my gosh! I gotta stop recording so late because now I can't think of names. But Ingram, I can't remember his first name either right now. This is bad, but yeah, like an Ingram Garland swap would be cool because then you do build up that wing depth. Then you're able to. The Pelicans can get a guard. Okay, that's enough talk for the Cavs, man. I'm losing my mind, and so I'm gonna move over to the other Eastern Conference series, which I think I'm gonna talk a little bit more about because I just think with the Celtics Cavs series, what is there to say? The Celtics are clearly the better team. The Cavs put up good fights, but no one really expected them to win. So moving on to the next series, which is the Knicks and the Pacers. Shout out Pacers for moving on. I didn't expect them to go this far. I expected them to lose in the first round, and then whenever I made my other predictions, I expected them to lose this round. But not to like knock what the Pacers are doing, but they did play two beat up teams. But it's not their fault. They can only play the team that's in front of them. It's not like they can be like, oh, we'll wait until they're healthy to play. And not like they got to play the schedule. And if the team they're playing is injured, what do you expect them to do? Go out and lose and be like, well, we fell back because they were injured. So that's one thing I've seen a lot of people talk about is the Pacers only playing injured teams. But like I said, what do you expect them to do about it? They can only play who's in front of them. And they've done a good job at that. I think both series, well, the first series went to 6, and then this one went to 7. But really good wins. I mean, beating this Knicks and the Bucks team, even though they were injured, these were both teams that were projected to make deep runs in the playoffs. And there's been a lot of controversy with the Knicks revolving around Tom Thibodeau and his coaching style. People saying that he's playing his players and burning them out, because he does have history with doing this. I mean, you look at the Derrick Rose, whenever he got his notorious injury, it was kind of in a late game situation where they didn't necessarily need to be on the floor. So I mean, Coach Tibbs he's known for this sort of playing guys a lot of minutes, especially guys like Josh Hart, who are hustle players. He plays them a lot, because a lot of people, like, especially if you're kind of just a casual NBA fan, which, let me preface this, being a casual NBA fan, there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that you just watch it sometime. Maybe you watch highlights, big, like, high stakes games you watch for fun. There's nothing wrong with being a casual fan. So let me say that I'm not saying casual fan with a negative connotation. I just think there's simply a difference between a casual and a diehard, and both of them are good. There's nothing wrong with being either of those. But casual fans see Josh Hart and they see that he plays 48 minutes a game, and they're like, why does he play that? It's because Coach Tibbs likes those hustle guys that give a lot of effort. He rebounds. He does pretty much everything on the floor. Obviously, he doesn't really excel at one thing specifically other than maybe rebounding and defense, but he does everything, and he has the hustle, which that's a Tibbs guy. But so going back to my main topic of discussion, where people think that this is Coach Tibbs' fault. My personal opinion, I don't think it is Coach Tibbs' fault. I don't think he's overplaying his guys. Obviously, you see clips of Josh Hart going on, whenever he does finally get a chance to sit down, he is exhausted. That obviously is Coach Tibbs' fault for playing him so much. And I believe in this last game, he even had a request to sit down on the bench. I could be wrong. That was something I saw. I didn't really investigate it too much, but that is something I saw with him. But I don't think, like, the injury... Okay, so you look at... Obviously, Julius Randle has been injured the whole playoff run. Mitchell Robinson was injured the entire year, and then he had 2 season-ending injuries in one season. He just got injured again in the playoffs, season-ending, obviously. Jalen Brunson has been dealing with stuff. Josh Hart in Game 6 had the abdominal stuff. In the Bucks series, I think is whenever OG started having a little... Or maybe OG had an injury before that, and it just kind of lingered throughout the playoffs, so he's missed games and stuff. I know for sure he missed the first... Maybe Game 2 or 3 or 3 and 4 of this series. I don't remember, but he did miss a few games this series. So you have a lot of their key components for this Knicks team being injured quite often. And I guess you could attribute some of that to just wear and tear on the body from playing so much. But you look at all these injuries that they've been facing, and they've been freak accidents, really. Like the OG one where he's just running and just hurts himself. And the other injuries, I can't exactly remember. I don't remember the Josh Hart one, even though I literally just watched a video on it yesterday. But, I mean, these injuries aren't like... I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think he is the reason these guys are injured. If the team lost because they just looked exhausted out there, that would be completely different than just being beat up and injured. I just think it's bad injury luck for this team. But with them being eliminated, I would love to see them just go out and get more shot-making ability. And I think this postseason run also shows that Knicks fans, you don't really have to be too attached to Julius Randle, right? Obviously, he is another guy that can be that scoring punch, but he showed that you don't need him. I mean, it would have helped to have him, obviously. That is just more scoring objectively, but I think it shows that if you can get another scoring guy who can complement Jalen Brunson, because the thing is, you look at historically with Julius Randle, he's always been he shows his emotions with his body language a lot. He's been critiqued a lot for whenever he's not having a good game. He's not interacting with his teammates. He's not high-fiving them. He's not really passing the ball. His head's down. He's moping the whole time. He's not really engaged. But if he is having a good game, that is whenever he's engaged. He's all hyped up, all that stuff. So there is a little bit of a controversy around his emotions and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks try shopping him this offseason. They do have a few first-round picks that are tradable. They do have young guys that they could trade and get a solid player like DeMar DeRozan, for example. Because the thing is with the Knicks is because Coach Tibbs, like I mentioned, is your coach, only certain guys fit that sort of culture of just being like a workhorse and playing your heart out every time you're on the court. And you can see that with the guys they have on their team. You look at Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, whenever he's in a good mood, like I mentioned. You have Hartenstein, you have Josh Hart, you have Dante DiVincenzo. You have a lot of guys who do play like that. So, which is why I threw out the name DeMar DeRozan. But I don't think the Bulls are going to look at moving him. If anything, they're going to move Zach LaVine, and I don't think Zach LaVine fits that. There's obviously been reports of Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell. These are guys that want to go there. Donovan Mitchell, I believe, is from New York. I don't know where Devin Booker's from. I think he might be from maybe L.A. I have no clue where he's from. But I know Donovan Mitchell's a New York guy. So that is something you could see happen. There are a lot of moves that the New York Knicks could make. So this is a team that I would be looking out for in this offseason. I think that's everything I want to say about this series. Shout out Tyrese Halliburton is doing a lot better as of late. He did have a rough start in the first series. Oh, I do want to mention, I think it's been proven so far that the Pacers' Achilles heel or their biggest X factor is Pascal Siakam, because you look in the Bucks series, there wasn't anybody that could guard Pascal, so he had a bunch of good games. I mean, I think he had a bunch of 30-point games. He was going off because no one on that Bucks team could guard him because Giannis was out. Bobby Portis can a little bit, but he's not quick enough, not agile enough. And then you look in this Knicks series, every game that OG Anunoby was either just unhealthy or not in the game, the Pacers ended up winning because Pascal Siakam had a really good game. Obviously not every game was that way, but a good majority of them. In every game that OG Anunoby was healthy and in the game, Pascal Siakam didn't have the best game, and they ended up losing that game. So I do think that's the biggest swing / X factor / just the most important factor, the Achilles heel to this team, is if you can stop Pascal Siakam's just one-on-one scoring, because he is one of the few players on this team that can really score one-on-one. But that's that. So moving over to the Western Conference, I want to mention, I think I'm just going to try and save the best series for last. So we're going to go with the Thunder versus Mavericks series. It is a little disappointing for the Thunder because a lot of people expected the Thunder to win this series. Them losing isn't really the most ideal situation, but Thunder fans, don't look at losing this series in the fashion you did and think this is a lost season, because I think this is an amazing season for you guys. Being the number one seed in such a tough Western Conference, honestly, this was a pretty deep playoff run for the team's average age being like 22. They're one of like the top 5 youngest teams in the league, and they were the best team in the West, best team arguably in the regular season. I mean, other than the Celtics, but I guess you could say second best regular season team. The team chemistry is there. A lot of these guys are coming back. I would expect them to make moves around some guys like Aaron Wiggins. I could see moving, just because while Aaron Wiggins is, yes, a very good player, they could do without him. I expect them to keep both Jalen Williams, because Jay Will from Arkansas, he's a good hustle guy. He's a rebounder. He takes charges. He does all the little things that help winning. And obviously J Dub from Santa Clara, he's their second best player on the team. But I would definitely expect some moves. I don't know. I feel like obviously people say hindsight is 2020. That Gordon Hayward trade didn't pan out very good. It was kind of just like a useless trade. I mean, I feel like they probably picked him up to try and get that veteran experience, but he didn't really end up playing in the playoffs. So I would expect him to be someone who maybe doesn't return this year. Obviously, Bismack Biyombo might not return. I think the biggest piece they have is Josh Giddey. I've seen mixed feelings with him, like just amongst OKC fans. Some want him gone because he is such a situational player. You can't, and especially it's so matchup based, which is why he played more in their first series against the Pelicans versus this Mavericks team. Because depending on the matchup you're playing, you can't really play him too much because of his very select, limited skill set of pretty much only being a playmaker. He's able to shoot the ball a little bit here and there, but he can't make his own shot. He's not the best defender. Not much of a hustle guy. He's more just strictly IQ, playmaking, passing, which is why a lot of OKC fans want him, because if he's a guy you bring off your bench, he's known as the Slob Wizard. Pause. Slob just stands for sideline out of bounds. He's one of the best inbounders in the entire league. That's such a good asset to have in situations, if you're in a clutch situation in a playoff game, which you saw a lot in the Mavericks series. But I would expect him to be a guy that's maybe moved around. I'm not sure exactly, but I would expect everyone else to probably remain the same. Maybe Isaiah Joe, but I don't think OKC fans want to see Isaiah Joe go. I'm trying to think of other guys that maybe get moved, and I can't really think of any. I think they're solid where they are. I think pretty much just Aaron Wiggins, Gordon Hayward, and Josh Giddey are the three main guys that might end up getting moved. Shout out to the Mavericks. I didn't expect them to. I don't know if I said this on camera, but I've kind of believed that it's hard to build a good team around Luka because he is so ball dominant. That if whenever other people finally get the chance to shoot the ball, they're maybe not as warm, not as hot as they'd like to be, a little cold from not really touching the ball. But he's proved that is not the case, and he proved me wrong for sure. PJ Washington has had an amazing series against OKC. I would say he's probably been their best player of the series, other than maybe Kyrie had a few good games, Luka had a few good games, but I think he was the most consistently good player throughout this entire series. I don't know anything else I really want to mention. The bigs killed OKC. That is one thing I expect OKC to go out and do this offseason, is to bring in a big. I have a friend who's a big OKC fan. He mentioned names like Nicholas Claxton. He wants Tyus Jones, which would be an amazing backup point guard position. So there were a few names. Maybe I can bring him on this podcast and he can talk just his ideas about what OKC could do, because I think they have one of the most intriguing off seasons. They have the money to spend. They have a treasure trove of draft picks. We obviously know that. They have young talent they can move and get rid of. I would expect them to keep Cason Wallace, because I think he's a very valuable player, at least for developing long term with this team. But yeah, they have, in my opinion, Philly, and I would say the Knicks probably have the most intriguing offseason. If maybe you could throw the Clippers and Bucks maybe in there as well. But I'm excited to see what they do this offseason. I think that's all I want to mention for that series. I don't think I forgot anything. I don't think so. So we're gonna move on to the most fun series, and that is the Timberwolves versus the Nuggets. It was really weird seeing. I guess you could say the duality of this series. Because you look at games 1, 2, 6, and 7, and this looks like the best defensive team in terms of, I'm talking about the Timberwolves right now. The best defensive team, making the Timberwolves mad. Obviously, everyone knows about that Jamal Murray throwing the heat pack on the court. Jamal Murray was very upset pretty much this entire series. He didn't really have a good game up until game 7. But game 6, he put up a stinker. I think he went 4 for 16, only 10 points. Stinker. Honestly, this entire playoffs just really hasn't been good for Jamal Murray. This last game obviously was his best game in my opinion, but they didn't win, so it doesn't really matter. Jokic, speaking, I'm mainly talking in this game 7 and honestly throughout the entire series. Jokic normally gets his period in the third quarter where he can get some rest, and so he's not super drained by the time the fourth quarter comes. But in game 7, he wasn't really able to get that rest, so he played a lot more minutes than what you're used to seeing him playing. And you could tell in that fourth quarter he just didn't have any fuel left in the tank. But dude, shout out to this Timberwolves team. And I mentioned how game 1, 2, 6, and 7 they looked amazing. Games 3, 4, and 5 they looked like a completely different team. Their defense just completely flew out the window. Their offense wasn't as fluid as it was looking before that. The Nuggets were able to just completely tear apart that Timberwolves defense, which is really strange to see. Game 7 was really the only game this entire series that was close. And you look at this, a series going to Game 7, you would expect it to be close the entire way, but each game was a blowout, especially with Game 6 being a blowout, a 45-point win. I think that was the biggest point margin. So the Timberwolves did set a lot of records this offseason. They had the biggest point margin in a win in playoff history, or maybe in the last 20 years. They set the biggest record, I think, for the record for the biggest comeback in a Game 7. It was a 20-point deficit. They came back from it and ended up winning. But this Nuggets team, I don't know what their offseason looks like. I would assume they bring back the main guys. I'm looking at like Aaron Gordon, obviously Jokic, Jamal Murray, MPJ. I would expect them to try and bring back Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Christian Brown. I think they obviously need to develop that bench a little bit more and get more bench pieces in that they can rely on throughout the entire season and through an entire playoff series. I think that was the main thing they were lacking in, is just bench production. The only guy that gave him production off the bench was Christian Brown. I think the Game 7, he was the only player to score, or no, Game 6, I think he was the only player to score off the bench, which I don't even think he scored that much. But it's weird. It's just weird. Like, seeing this Nuggets team that felt invincible coming into the playoffs, a lot of people had this idea that they were just going to sweep through the West, and then the Celtics was going to be their first pretty much nightmare. Other than me, not to toot my own horn, but that's me tooting my own horn. I predicted the Timberwolves making it all the way to the finals. I didn't predict them winning. You guys can go back and watch my bracket video, but I did have them making it to the finals. I had them clearing out the West, and so far they've done that. They beat the number one, the reigning champs. This is the team that everyone kind of expected to come out of the East, and they beat them pretty convincingly. Obviously, it went to 7, but the games they did win, it was very convincingly, except for Game 7. I already mentioned that, but just a fun overall series. I don't know what to say about the Nuggets. They did a lot of talking last year after they won the championship. They've done a lot of talking this year. Just talking about, like, people didn't believe in us, all that, blah, blah, blah. Now what do you do? You've been punched in the mouth. How do you recover? What do you do next season? I don't think their offseason is going to be super interesting. I think they mainly just pick up 1 or 2 complementary pieces for the core they have and just run it back. Because this team is amazing. They do have the best starting 5 in the league, at least throughout the regular season. I think that's even like a statistical fact that they had the best starting 5. Maybe the Celtics was the only team that rivaled them, but at least in the West, for sure, best starting 5. So I think that's everything I want to mention. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. Oh, finally, Game 7, Cat had a good game, and he didn't get in foul trouble. He didn't just commit dumb fouls the entire time. I think he only really, in my opinion, had 2 stupid fouls. So shout out Cat. Shout out Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert. This whole team is just amazing. I've already talked about how good they are. I'm excited to see what they do for the rest of this playoffs. And in my opinion, I'm going to talk about this later. So I'm just going to shut my mouth and save this for later. So I'm going to start now that I've talked about the 4 series from this last round. I'm going to talk about the upcoming 2 series, starting with the West. Actually, I'm just going to start with the East. I think this is a cakewalk for the Celtics. I think this is the best outcome they could have had. Whether the Pacers or the Knicks win, they get to play a beat-up Knicks or they get to play a completely healthy Pacers. But I think the Pacers could give them a run for their money. At least put it... I could see the series going to 7. Just based off the Pacers' play style. Everyone knows the Celtics are bound to have one bad shooting game, and since they are so predicated around the three-point shot, if they have one bad shooting game, they're probably going to end up losing. That's why they lost to the Heat in Game 2. They lost to the Cavs in Game 2. So I could see where the Pacers might be able to take advantage of that, and I mentioned their X factor being Pascal Siakam. I don't think they really have a guy that can guard Pascal. If Porzingis comes back healthy, which I'm not sure when he does, but if he does come back healthy, I don't know, he might already be back. I'm not sure. I'm not really tapped in, as you can tell, with the Celtics, just because I think their series are kind of boring because they're so good. But if he's not able to come back, I don't think they have anyone that can guard him. Obviously, Jaylen Brown is known as a good defender, but I just don't think he's long enough and tall enough to guard Pascal. Jason Tatum is historically, he has a reputation of being a good defender, but this entire season, and especially this postseason, he hasn't really been that defender that people expect out of him. I mean, you have Drew Holiday and Derek White that are amazing perimeter defenders, but they're just, once again, not big enough for him. So we'll see what they do. Maybe they put Al Horford on him, and I could see him possibly being a factor. I just don't think he's fast enough for Pascal. So it'll be fun to see what this team, Pacers team can do against Celtics. I don't expect them to win, but I definitely expect them to put up a fight, at least take it to 6. Not much to say about the Celtics. Like I said, obviously, if they can get Porzingis back, that's amazing for them. But they just have such a deep, talented team. I don't know what to expect out of them other than just a win. There's not much to say with that. So it's been kind of boring talking about the Celtics just because they are so good that it's just boring. Everything that people expect them to do, they just do. And obviously, people are talking about the main critique with them is that the East is weak right now because there's a bunch of injured teams. But it's the same thing I've talked about with the Pacers. What do you expect them to do? Because they're playing these lesser teams like the Mavericks or did they play the Hawks? Who did they play? Oh, the Heat. Obviously, the Heat. They played the Heat and then the Cavs. What do you expect them to do? Like, do you expect them to play down to their opponent, play with their food, maybe bring it to a 7-game series? What do you expect them to do? That's the perks of getting the number 1 seed, is that you have the easiest path to the finals in your conference. So what do you expect? That's like, you look at the number 1 seed, they end up having to play the 5 seed and the 8 seed, or the 5 or 6 seed and the 8 seed. So what do you really expect them to do? They have to play who's in front of them, and that's what they've done. You can't really discredit them for having an easy path because they've won these series convincingly. So, I mean, maybe the Pacers can maybe do something to kind of destroy that narrative, but we'll see in the future. I'll come back to that idea of having the easiest path. And so moving back over to the West, that is going to be the Mavericks versus the Wolves. So I had said the reason I had picked the Thunder originally to beat the Mavs because I thought they had too many wing defenders, but it proved that even though they had the wing defenders to slow down Luka and Kyrie, they didn't have the people to slow down like Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, so they got killed pretty much on the interior. I don't expect that to be the case with the Wolves because the Wolves have a 1 through 5 lineup that can guard. They can guard everybody in their lineup from Mike Conley, you look at Ant Edwards, they have Cat, they have Rudy Gobert, they have Jaden McDaniels. All 5 of those guys are elite defenders. I don't think there's really any way they can exploit this Wolves team. I think they have the guys to guard Kyrie. I think Ant already said he wants that Kyrie matchup. They have the guys to guard Luka. You look at, I would assume Jaden McDaniels gets that matchup. I would expect Cat to be on PJ Washington. I don't know who. I guess if Dante Exum is starting for the Mavericks, I don't know who Mike Conley would be matching up with, but that's kind of how I would expect the matchups to lay out, and obviously Rudy Gobert being the paint. I just don't think that the Mavericks have enough offensive firepower because, like I said, the reason they beat OKC is because of the others. But I think looking at the Timberwolves, they have the guys to guard the others, and they have guys who can slow down, not stop, but slow down Luka and Kyrie. And I think that's just a disaster for the Mavericks offensively. And defensively, I don't think they really have anyone to keep up with this lineup. And like I've mentioned, I think the Timberwolves had one of the worst offenses and one of the worst clutch offenses in the regular season. But every player on their court except for Rudy Gobert can score the ball. Cat can make his own shot. Mike Conley can make his own shot. Ant obviously can make his own shot. Jaden McDaniels is super underrated because coming out of college, a lot of people don't know this, is he was looked at as a scorer, as an offensive guy, an athletic wing that can score the ball. And he developed into the defensive role that he has now. Same thing with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's known as a defender and a 3-and-D player right now. But coming into the league, he was expected to be this ball-handling, shot-creating scorer. And so these guys have that in their bag to be able to score in that way. So I just think this Wolves team is so perfectly built. I don't think there's any team that matches up well against them except for the Celtics. So I would expect the Timberwolves to win this series. I'm expecting around 5 or 6. I don't think it goes to 7. I don't think it's a sweep. But I could see a gentleman's sweep or a 6-game series. I don't think the Mavericks put too much of a fight. But then again, you can't doubt Luka. So I'm not saying a Game 7 isn't impossible. I'm not saying a Mavericks win isn't impossible. I just don't think it's probable, obviously. So this obviously that'll be the West has been so many fun series. Even in like the Suns sweep, it was fun to see this Timberwolves team come out and do this. But I expected this out of them. This is stuff I expect them to do. So I'm not surprised by them being able to beat the Suns in 4, being able to beat the reigning champs. I wouldn't be surprised if they beat that they beat the Mavericks. I would be surprised if they beat the Celtics. I'd be surprised if anybody beats the Celtics. But then again, I think it's their odds if they make it to the finals. If for some reason I'm correct and the Celtics and the Timberwolves make it, which is my original prediction for the finals in my bracket video, once again, go check that out. If those guys make it, I think the odds of the Celtics winning is only around 60%. I don't think it's a guaranteed win for them like the other teams. If anything, I could see it going as low as 55%. That's how good this Timberwolves team is. So, with that being said, who do I think is going to win the finals as of now? Is my opinion going to change? No, I think it's still going to be the Celtics. But like I just said, I think the Timberwolves are very close behind them. Because one thing with the Celtics, I mentioned it earlier, is if they have a bad shooting performance, they predicate their game so much on the three-point shot. And like I said, the Timberwolves have such good off-ball defense, and they have such good perimeter defense. They defend everything. They defend the perimeter. They defend the paint. They have off-ball movement. They communicate so well. I could see them putting up an amazing fight against that Celtics team. So maybe I'm convincing myself right now that the Timberwolves are going to win it all. But I'm still just going to stick with the safe bet and say the Celtics, but do not count out the Timberwolves. So I think that is everything I want to cover for this episode. I don't think I missed any important details. It doesn't look like I was yapping for too long either. Only about 30 minutes, I think, is this video probably going to be about 30 minutes long. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tune in for some draft stuff. I would believe my next episode is going to be some draft content. I don't know what I'm going to cover. I think it might be covering draft prospects out of the SEC and just creating my own draft profiles for them. So stay tuned for that if you guys care about any sort of draft content. That's going to be guys like Reed Shepard, Antonio Reeves, a lot of Kentucky guys. You look at Rob Dillingham. Trevin Brazil, I think, is one of the only other guys out of the SEC that's getting any traction right now. But, I'll cover that. I'll make that in the video. So stay tuned for the next one. And I appreciate you guys for watching. Peace out.